My name is Sophia Marlowe. I'm 26 years old. And I recently watched a 15-year friendship collapse because my best friend couldn't resist turning my mother's suffering into a joke. Natasha Bellamy was 27. And until that night, I thought of her as family. We met in middle school. Survived awkward teenage years. College applications. Heartbreaks. First apartments. And our first terrible jobs together. Our families became close too. After my father died when I was 19, Natasha's mother, Beatrice, practically adopted me. She invited me to family dinners, insisted I join them for holidays, and once took me on their summer vacation because she didn't want me sitting alone in an empty house. Beatrice was demanding, traditional, and fiercely protective. But she had a generous heart. She owned 3 successful restaurants and several properties, all built from years of relentless work. Respect mattered to her, especially respect for elders and people who had survived hardship. My mother, Diane, had survived more than most people ever should. 3 years earlier, a drunk driver hit her head-on. She lived, but the accident left severe scars across her face. Multiple surgeries helped, but they couldn't restore the woman she remembered seeing in the mirror. The trauma also triggered alopecia. Most of her hair fell out, and what returned grew in thin, uneven patches. She began wearing wigs, but every reflection became another reason to doubt herself. Medication and limited mobility caused her to gain weight. Before the crash, she had been warm, social, and impossible to keep home. Afterward, she worked remotely, ordered groceries, and rarely left, except for medical appointments or something important involving me. Watching her shrink away from the world broke my heart. For my 26th birthday, I planned a small gathering at my apartment. Around 20 people came for drinks, snacks, and music. My roommate, Damien Cole, set a camera on a tripod so guests could record birthday messages. It was impossible to miss. He placed a sign beside it that read, "Recording. Leave Sophia a birthday message." My mother surprised me by coming. She arrived holding homemade tiramisu, my favorite dessert, with both hands as though it were something fragile. She wore her best wig and a navy dress I hadn't seen since before the accident. When I opened the door, she gave me a nervous smile. "Is it too much?" she whispered, touching the edge of her wig. "You look beautiful," I told her. Her eyes lowered because she didn't believe me. But she came inside anyway. She stayed mostly in the kitchen with me. A few guests stopped to compliment the tiramisu and talk with her. Everyone was kind. For half an hour, I saw glimpses of the woman she used to be. She laughed once, softly, when Damien claimed he would eat the entire dessert before midnight. At around 9, she hugged me for a long time. "I'm glad I came," she said. "So uneasy." I watched her walk down the hallway with her shoulders held straighter than usual. I remember feeling proud of her. That memory would later become tangled with rage. About an hour after she left, Natasha was visibly drunk. She had been drinking since 6 and arrived carrying a half-empty wine bottle in her purse. We were sitting in the living room when she suddenly burst out laughing. "I'm sorry," she announced loudly, "but I can't keep this in anymore." The room quieted. "Did everyone see Sophia's mom?" Natasha asked. She literally looked like a man in drag. I kept waiting for her to start lip-syncing. Nobody laughed. The camera was still running in the corner. I stared at Natasha and kept my voice flat. "Hilarious." She mistook my calmness for permission. "I'm just being honest," she continued. "That wig looked like it came from a clearance bin." "And her face?" Natasha winced theatrically. "Someone should get her on a reality show so she can at least make money looking like that." My friend Kenji leaned forward. "Natasha, stop." But she waved him away. "Oh, please." Everyone noticed. Remember when Diane used to be pretty? Now she looks completely different. No shade. Just facts. Something inside me went still. I could have screamed. I could have thrown her out. Instead, I stood, walked into my bedroom, and locked the door. I stayed there until I heard her leave 45 minutes later. The next morning, I woke to 23 texts. You're mad. Don't be so sensitive. It was a joke. Everyone laughed. Nobody had laughed. Then came, you're being dramatic. Text me when you're done pouting. There was no apology. Not even a fake one. I didn't answer. That Friday, Beatrice was supposed to have lunch with my mother. During their conversation, my mother casually mentioned that Natasha seemed to enjoy my birthday party. Beatrice replied that Natasha had complained I was ignoring her for no reason. When my mother told me, I made a decision. Damien had already saved the footage. I cut nothing and softened nothing. I sent Beatrice this section, showing Natasha's entire performance, along with one message. This is why I'm no longer speaking to Natasha. I thought you should know who your daughter becomes when she thinks no one important is watching. I sent it Thursday night. By Friday morning, everything exploded. Beatrice watched the recording once and called Natasha immediately. According to what Beatrice later told my mother, her first words were controlled and cold. I just watched a video of you mocking Diane. What video? The one where you compared a woman who survived a near-fatal accident to a man in drag. Natasha's response was immediate. Oh my God. Sophia actually sent you that I was drunk. It was a joke. Alcohol reveals what restraint hides, Beatrice said. And jokes reveal character. You're really taking her side. I'm your daughter. My daughter was taught better than this. Or so I believed. Beatrice ended the call and drove to Natasha's condo. The condo Beatrice had purchased and still owned. She stayed less than 10 minutes. In that time, she told Natasha she was disgusted, demanded that she examine who she had become, and warned her that their financial arrangement was about to change. Before leaving, she took Natasha's spare key. That night, my phone became unusable. 87 texts, 42 calls. What did you tell my mother? She's cutting me off. You're ruining my life over one joke. I've known you for 15 years. She took the condo key. You need to fix this. I'll apologize. Fine. I'm sorry. Now call her. I read that last message twice. Even her apology sounded like an invoice. I blocked her number. Saturday morning. Natasha appeared at my apartment and pounded on the door for 10 minutes. Damien recorded through the peephole while she shouted that I was throwing away 15 years because of one joke. Your mother isn't even that sensitive. She yelled. You're the one being dramatic. My mom changed the locks. That's illegal. I'll sue both of you. Damien called through the door. Sophia isn't home. Also, you're being recorded again. Natasha kicked the door before leaving. On Monday, she came to my workplace and told reception she was my sister dealing with a family emergency. When they called me, I said, tell her to leave or call security. She was escorted out, but not before announcing in the lobby that I was a snake who destroyed people's lives over jokes. Then she took the story online. She posted that her best friend of 15 years had weaponized a drunken mistake and destroyed her relationship with her family. She wrote that sensitive people couldn't handle honesty and ran to their mothers instead of talking like adults. At first, a few people supported her. Then someone asked what she had actually said. Natasha avoided the question. So Damien posted the recording beneath her statement. The reaction changed instantly. People recognized my mother as the woman who had nearly died in the crash. Friends who had defended Natasha deleted their comments. Others asked how she could mock an accident survivor and still see herself as the victim. Natasha erased the posts within hours, but the damage had already traveled beyond social media. Beatrice began investigating. She found screenshots from group chats where Natasha mocked friends behind their backs. She contacted former restaurant employees who admitted they had quit because of the way Natasha treated them. She uncovered a video of Natasha berating a server until the young woman cried. Then Beatrice found messages where Natasha told people her mother was becoming senile, using the lie to explain why a 27-year-old woman still needed complete financial support. On Wednesday night, Beatrice called me. Her voice sounded older than it had a week earlier. "Sofia," she said, "I need to thank you." That recording opened my eyes. I didn't know what to say. She paused, then added, "I thought I was protecting my daughter. I was protecting her from consequences. There is a difference." A faint sound came through the phone, like papers being stacked. "I have enabled something cruel," Beatrice continued. "Now, I'm going to correct it." That was the moment I understood. Natasha hadn't just lost a friendship. She was about to discover how expensive cruelty could become. Beatrice's definition of correcting it was more severe than I expected. Until then, I had known Natasha lived comfortably. I hadn't realized nearly every part of that comfort came from her mother. Beatrice paid the $3,200 monthly mortgage on Natasha's condo. She covered the $890 payment on a luxury SUV. Credit card bills that often reached $4,000 or $5,000 a month. Due $500 allowance. Health insurance. Utilities. And her phone plan. Natasha was 27 years old and had been living like consequences were. Something that happened to other people. Within days, everything stopped. Beatrice didn't simply cut her off without warning. She gave her 3 options. The first was to move back into the family home. Follow Beatrice's rules. Work at one of the restaurants. And slowly rebuild trust. The second was to accept a one-time payment of $50,000 to start over independently, but surrender any claim to a future inheritance. The third was to keep fighting and receive nothing. Natasha somehow invented a fourth option: refuse reality and terrorize everyone involved. She told people the condo belonged to her because she had lived there for 3 years. Beatrice's lawyer answered that quickly. The deed was in Beatrice's name. Natasha had never paid rent and had no ownership interest. Legally, she was a guest who had been given formal notice to leave. She had 60 days. The SUV was even more embarrassing. When Beatrice requested its return, Natasha hid it at her boyfriend Adrian's apartment and claimed she didn't know where it was. Beatrice reported the vehicle missing. Police located it within 24 hours. Beatrice declined to press charges. But Natasha was warned that hiding property she did not own could have become a criminal matter. She still didn't understand the seriousness of what was happening. Her texts began coming from unfamiliar numbers after I blocked her. "You wanted this. My mother is destroying me because of you. You're jealous because I had a better life. Tell Diane she won." That last message made my stomach turn. My mother had never competed with Natasha. She had barely spoken to her at the party. She had arrived carrying dessert, stayed quietly for half an hour, and left believing she had managed one small victory over her fear. Natasha had turned that courage into ammunition. I changed my number. For several days, things were quiet. Then my mother called me from the parking lot outside her physical therapy clinic. She was crying so hard, I could barely understand her. "Sofia," she whispered. She was waiting for me. My chest tightened. "Who?" "Natasha." I was already reaching for my keys. My mother had finished her appointment and was walking toward her car when Natasha stepped out from between 2 parked vehicles. She positioned herself directly in front of my mother and demanded to know whether she was happy now. "You turned Beatrice against me," Natasha said. "I'm losing everything because of you." My mother tried to walk around her. "Natasha, please move." But Natasha blocked her again. "All because you can't take a joke." My mother kept her eyes down and moved toward the driver's door. "I don't want trouble." Natasha laughed. "Trouble? You already caused trouble. My life is ruined." Then, she said something I still cannot repeat without feeling sick. "The accident did you a favor?" Now your outside matches your inside. Ugly and broken. My mother froze. A stranger, sitting in a nearby car, had noticed the confrontation and started recording. The video showed my mother clutching her therapy folder against her chest, while Natasha stood in front of her, speaking with the calm confidence of someone who believed cruelty became truth if delivered without hesitation. The witness eventually stepped out and told Natasha to move away. Natasha left, only after realizing she was being filmed. The witness found my mother inside her car, shaking too badly to drive. She stayed with her until she calmed down, then sent her the recording. My mother sent it to me that evening. I watched it once. Then, I sent it to Beatrice. After that, I called the police and filed a harassment report. Beatrice called me less than 20 minutes later. Her voice had changed. There was no grief in it anymore. Only decision. I offered her mercy. She said. She mistook it for weakness. The $50 000 option disappeared that night. The next morning, Natasha was served with formal eviction papers. A cease and desist letter ordered her to stop contacting or approaching my mother. Beatrice's attorney also informed her that any inheritance she might once have received was being redirected to charitable organizations. Natasha responded by hiring a cheap lawyer and filing what sounded like every accusation she could find online. She sued Beatrice for emotional distress. She claimed promissory estoppel because her mother had supposedly promised to support her forever. She accused Beatrice of defamation for explaining why she had been cut off. Most absurdly, she accused her 8-year-old mother of elder abuse. The case was dismissed with prejudice, according to someone who attended the hearing. Even the judge struggled to hide his disbelief while reading the elder abuse claim. A reasonable person might have taken that humiliation as a sign to stop. Natasha took it as motivation to reinvent herself. She created an online business called Natasha Now, advertising herself as a life coach who empowered women to recover from toxic relationships and family betrayal. Her fundraising page asked for $100 000 to launch courses, private coaching sessions, and a podcast. Her introduction read, "As a woman who survived emotional abuse from the people closest to me, I understand what it means to rebuild from nothing." She messaged everyone she knew, "Hey, Bob, I'm starting an incredible platform for women who've been betrayed by family and friends. Investments begin at only $500. She raised $1. 250. Every dollar came from Adrian. Adrian had been dating Natasha for almost 2 years. I had met him several times. He was quiet, patient, and always seemed slightly exhausted around her. What Natasha didn't know was that he had already been planning to end the relationship. He had intended to wait until after her birthday, hoping to avoid making an already tense month worse. Then he learned she had ambushed my mother outside a medical appointment. His timeline changed. He ended the relationship by text while Natasha was viewing apartments she could not afford. His message was brief. "I can't do this anymore. Your mother was right about you. Do not contact me again." Natasha called him repeatedly. When he blocked her, she appeared at his office. Security escorted her from the building. She later went to his gym and demanded to see him. The manager banned her permanently. Finally, she drove to his apartment and discovered he had already changed the locks. By then, she was facing eviction. Had new car. No income she could live on. No inheritance. And no boyfriend. For one brief moment, I thought she might finally understand. Instead, she started a video series titled, "How My Abusive Mother Destroyed My Life." Episode 1 was called, "She Took My Home." Episode 2 was, "She Stole My Car." Episode 3 was, "She Turned Everyone Against Me." Episode 4 was, "She Is Keeping Me From My Inheritance." Every video carefully avoided mentioning the birthday party, the recording, or the parking lot confrontation. For several days, strangers believed her. Then someone found Damien's original post and linked the birthday video in her comments. Natasha disabled comments. Another person uploaded the parking lot recording beside one of Natasha's videos about surviving abuse. The contrast was devastating. In one clip, Natasha cried into the camera about being mistreated. In the other, she told a visibly scarred accident survivor that she was ugly and broken. Her account was mass reported and removed within 48 hours. That should have ended it. But as the eviction deadline approached, Natasha became more desperate. She claimed squatters' rights, despite having a written occupancy agreement. She said she had developed a disability that made eviction unlawful, but provided no medical evidence. She accused Beatrice of discrimination and called the condo an unsafe environment, even though she had refused every inspection request. Then, she superglued the locks. Maintenance drilled them out the same afternoon. On the final eviction day, Natasha live-streamed herself being forcibly removed by corrupt police. The officers were patient. They repeatedly offered her the chance to leave voluntarily. One even helped carry boxes when she finally stepped outside. Only 73 people watched the livestream. The comments did not give her the sympathy she expected. Isn't this the woman who mocked the accident survivor? Karma moves fast. Maybe get a job. Rich people, discovering consequences in real time. Natasha ended the stream when someone posted a link to the parking lot video. She spent the next month moving from one temporary place to another. A cousin let her stay for 4 days. Natasha left after calling the cousin's children feral. A college friend took her in. Natasha insulted the friend's husband and said she had married beneath herself. A former co-worker offered a couch. Natasha ate their groceries, refused to contribute, and complained that the apartment was depressing. She even stayed briefly with one of Adrian's friends, then tried to flirt with him in exchange for a longer arrangement. He told Adrian, and she was asked to leave that night. Every door opened out of pity. Every door closed because she could not stop treating kindness like weakness. Meanwhile, my mother was struggling in silence. She began missing therapy appointments because she was afraid Natasha might return. She checked the parking lot before entering stores. If a car slowed near her, she flinched. I hated Natasha for what she had done. But I also hated myself for sending that first recording, even though I knew the blame wasn't mine. One evening, I admitted that to my mother. We were sitting at her kitchen table while untouched tea cooled between us. I keep wondering whether I made everything worse, I said. My mother looked at me for a long moment. You didn't make Natasha cruel, she answered. You only stopped helping her hide it. That was the first time I truly believed I had done the right thing. A week later, Beatrice invited us to dinner at the private dining room of her oldest restaurant. When we arrived, my mother stopped at the entrance. A small plaque had been placed beside the door. The Diane Marlowe Recovery Fund. Beatrice had created a charitable fund for accident survivors who needed help paying for reconstructive treatment, counseling, transportation, and rehabilitation. My mother covered her mouth. Why would you do this? She asked. Beatrice's eyes filled with tears. Because my daughter used your pain to make herself feel powerful, she said. I want something good to exist where she created harm. She had also arranged for my mother to meet a specialist who worked with scar treatment and trauma recovery. For the first time in years, my mother agreed without needing to be persuaded. Across town, Natasha was living in a weekly motel and working part-time at a cell phone store. She continued posting short messages about rising above toxic people, but her audience had disappeared. Her family had stopped answering. Adrian had changed his number, and Beatrice had already begun rewriting her will. Natasha still believed the worst had happened. She had no idea the final consequences were only beginning. By the time Natasha's eviction was finally over, there wasn't much left for her to lose. She had already lost her condo, her luxury SUV, her allowance, her inheritance, her boyfriend, and nearly every friendship that had once made her life comfortable. The strange part was that she still believed everyone else had betrayed her. The live stream of her eviction spread much farther than she expected. She had started filming before the deputies arrived, dramatically telling viewers she was about to become homeless because of an abusive mother who wanted to control her adult daughter. Reality refused to cooperate with her story. The officers remained patient from beginning to end. They explained every step. They repeatedly offered her time to gather her belongings. One of them even carried several heavy boxes to the moving truck after she began crying that nobody cared about her. Instead of exposing corruption, the live stream exposed entitlement. The comments flooded in. Isn't this the woman who mocked an accident survivor? So this is the consequence she keeps leaving out. Imagine being this cruel and still calling yourself the victim. Karma finally caught up. Only 73 people watched live. But clips of the recording circulated afterward beside the birthday footage and the physical therapy parking lot confrontation. The internet connected every piece of the story. Natasha couldn't erase it anymore. She spent the next several weeks drifting from one temporary place to another. A cousin welcomed her into their home. 3 days later, she criticized their children, calling them wild and poorly raised. She was asked to leave. A college friend offered the guest room. Natasha complained the apartment was too small, and casually remarked that the friend's husband had settled beneath his potential. That invitation ended almost immediately. A former coworker let her sleep on the couch. Natasha emptied the refrigerator, refused to help with groceries, and complained constantly about the neighborhood. She lasted less than a week. She even convinced one of Adrian's friends to let her stay temporarily. Within days, she began flirting with him, hinting that they could help each other. He immediately contacted Adrian. Natasha was gone before sunset. Every opportunity disappeared for exactly the same reason. She never learned. Eventually, I heard she was renting a room in a weekly motel while working part-time at a cell phone store. She continued posting motivational quotes online about surviving toxic people. Almost nobody interacted anymore. Meanwhile, life slowly became quieter for the people she had tried to hurt. The specialist Beatrice introduced my mother to develop a treatment plan that focused not only on improving the appearance of her scars, but also on helping rebuild the confidence the accident had stolen. Progress came slowly, very slowly, but for the first time in years, there was progress. My mother started attending a support group for accident survivors. The first evening, she almost turned around before walking inside. She squeezed my hand. What if they stare? They won't. I told her. They already understand. When the meeting ended, she walked back to the car smiling. It wasn't a dramatic transformation. It was something much more meaningful. Hope. A few weeks later, she went to a movie theater for the first time since the accident. She still wore her wig. She still noticed people looking, but she stayed for the entire movie. When we walked outside afterward, she laughed because she had forgotten how loud theaters could be. That laugh meant more to me than Natasha could ever understand. Beatrice became part of our lives in a different way too. She invited us to dinners at her restaurants. Sometimes, she came to our house instead, insisting my mother's tiramisu was still better than anything her pastry chef could make. One evening, while the three of us were cleaning dishes together, Beatrice quietly told me she had finalized her estate plans. I changed everything, she said. I looked at her. There won't be an inheritance for Natasha. She wasn't smiling. I'm leaving it to charities, scholarships, and the recovery fund. My mother gently touched her arm. You don't have to explain yourself. I do. Beatrice answered softly. I spent years confusing love with enabling. Every time Natasha escaped the consequences of her actions, I convinced myself I was helping her. I wasn't. I was teaching her that money could erase accountability. She looked toward the window for several seconds. I failed as her mother. I can't change that. But maybe I can stop my mistakes from hurting anyone else. None of us spoke for a while. There wasn't anything to add. Several weeks later, I received one final email from Natasha. Apparently she had created another email account after discovering I had blocked the previous ones. The message was almost impressive in the way it accepted absolutely no responsibility. She wrote that I had destroyed her entire life over nothing. She claimed Beatrice had manipulated everyone against her. She insisted my mother had exaggerated everything. Then, in the final paragraph, She wrote something that made me laugh out loud. I forgive you. I'm ready for us to move forward whenever you're ready to apologize. I read it twice, just to make sure I hadn't misunderstood. Then, I forwarded the email to Beatrice with a simple subject line. Still hasn't learned anything. Less than 10 minutes later, Beatrice replied, "Some people refuse every lesson life offers them. Thank you again for showing me the truth." That was our entire conversation. Neither of us responded to Natasha. I blocked the new email address. For the first time since my birthday, there was complete silence. Looking back now, the saddest part isn't everything Natasha lost. It wasn't the condo. It wasn't the SUV. It wasn't the inheritance. It wasn't Adrian leaving. It wasn't the lawsuits. It wasn't even the public humiliation. The saddest part is how easily all of it could have been avoided. If, that night, at my birthday party, she had looked at me and sincerely said, "Sophia, I was drunk. I said something cruel about your mother. I'm ashamed of myself. Please tell Diane I'm sorry." I honestly believe things would have been different. Maybe not immediately. Trust would still have needed time, but there would have been a path forward. Instead, she defended the joke. Then she defended defending the joke. Then she blamed everyone else for reacting to the joke. Every new decision pushed her farther away from the life she already had. She lost her home because she refused accountability. She lost her boyfriend because he finally saw who she really was. She lost her inheritance because she valued cruelty more than character. She lost lifelong friends because every excuse revealed something uglier than the original insult. The friendship actually died the moment she laughed at my mother's scars. Everything afterward was simply the consequence of refusing to bury it with an honest apology. Today, my mother still makes tiramisu whenever I visit. Beatrice usually joins us for dinner once or twice a month. Sometimes they laugh together while arguing over recipes. Sometimes they sit quietly with tea, talking about books, gardens, or old family memories. Watching them heal has reminded me that kindness has a way of finding other kind people. Cruelty eventually isolates itself. The last update I ever heard about Natasha was that she was still working at the cell phone store, still moving between temporary rentals, and still telling anyone willing to listen that everyone else had ruined her life. Maybe one day she'll understand what actually happened. Maybe she won't. Either way, that lesson no longer belongs to me. My responsibility was never to protect someone from the consequences of their own choices. It was to protect my mother. I did, and if I were forced to relive that birthday all over again, I would send Beatrice the recording every single time. Because the recording didn't destroy Natasha's life, it simply showed everyone the person she had chosen to become.